Chosen one. Stop scrolling. This message did not find you by chance, and it is not here to entertain you. This video is about God's message reaching you through divine alignment, right at the moment your soul was ready to recognize it. If everything inside you just went quiet instead of distracted, that is not curiosity. It is the activation of your spiritual awakening. Before the mind questions, the soul knows, and that knowing always arrives with stillness, weight, and truth. I am not speaking to everyone. I am speaking to you. This video is about why chosen ones are called differently, why this message feels personal, and why you were meant to hear it now. God's message does not chase crowds or compete for attention. It finds those prepared to receive it. That sudden seriousness in your chest, that feeling that this is meant for you even though we've never met, that is divine alignment locking in. This is the moment your spirit leans forward and realizes what this video is about and why you need to stay until the end. From the outside, it may look like nothing special is happening, but inside, something ancient just stirred. Chosen ones know this feeling well. It feels like remembering something you never learned. Calm but intense. Quiet but powerful. This is how spiritual awakening begins. Not with noise, but with recognition. If you feel aligned with what is being spoken right now, comment 777. Not for me, not for validation, but as a signal to yourself that you heard the call. Your entire life has been preparing you for this moment, even if you could not name why. The delays, the detours, the confusion, the sense of being different without understanding how all of it was shaping you. Nothing was wasted. God does not prepare chosen ones randomly. Every experience, every loss, every restart was part of a divine assignment unfolding beneath the surface of your awareness. You were being trained long before you knew you were called. You may have spent years wondering why your path never felt normal, why things ended suddenly, why you were pushed out of places you tried to belong. That was not punishment, that was positioning. A divine assignment cannot grow in comfort or unconsciousness. It requires pressure, honesty, and depth. And depth is born through experiences that force you inward when others are allowed to drift. If you are here now, listening, it means your spiritual awakening has crossed a threshold. You are no longer asleep, even if you are still unsure. Awakening does not mean clarity all at once. It means awareness has turned on. It means you can no longer unknow what you are beginning to feel. And once awareness activates, life starts to make sense in a different way, not immediately, but truthfully. This is where life pattern revelation begins. You are about to see your past differently, not as a series of random events, but as a language God has been speaking to you all along. Patterns you once judged as failure will reveal themselves as instruction. Repetition will show itself as training. And what felt like delay will reveal itself as timing. This understanding will change how you see your entire life story, because it will finally place meaning where there was once confusion. Return with me to the beginning of this message and hear it clearly now. This is not motivation. This is not entertainment. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the pull you feel. You were called. There is a real war for awareness happening, and chosen ones feel it first. The pressure you've carried, the sensitivity you've tried to hide, the light you learned to dim to survive, it was all real, and it was all noticed. Your light is not optional. It is necessary, not loud, not performative, but steady and true. The world does not need more noise. It needs grounded truth carriers. That is why you were shaped the way you were. That is why your awakening feels serious instead of exciting. Seriousness is the sign of responsibility activating. Stand in this knowing now. You were called, not by chance, but by design. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you says yes without explanation, comment 111. Because you already know it. You were called. Why your life never followed a normal path. Chosen one, there is a reason your life never fit into neat lines or predictable timelines. From early on, you sensed it. Even as a child, you felt different, not better, not worse, just different. You noticed things others ignored. You questioned what others accepted. You carried a depth that had no clear place to land. This was not imagination, and it was not weakness. This was the earliest sign of divine calling and chosen one, preparation quietly beginning. This is still God's message, and it is important you hear this clearly now. Your struggles were not random. The disruptions you faced, the sudden endings, the moments when life forced a reset just as you were getting comfortable, none of that was accidental. Chosen ones are rarely given smooth paths, because smooth paths do not awaken awareness. Comfort keeps the soul asleep. A divine assignment requires presence, discernment, and strength that only pressure can form. You may look back and see a pattern of loss, change, or unexpected redirection. Relationships that ended without closure, opportunities that disappeared without warning, places where you thought you would stay but were forced to leave. Each time, it felt unfair. Each time, you wondered what you did wrong. But now, from a higher vantage point, a different truth begins to emerge. The pattern was not punishment. It was instruction. God teaches chosen ones through repetition, not explanation. When a lesson is not yet embodied, life brings it again in a different form, not to break you, but to build awareness. That is why similar themes kept appearing, even when the faces and circumstances changed. You were not failing the lesson. You were being trained by it. Isolation was part of this training too. There were seasons when you felt unseen, misunderstood, or separated from others your age. While others blended in, you stood apart. While others followed scripts, you questioned them. This distance was not rejection. It was protection. A chosen one cannot hear God's message clearly in constant noise. Silence, solitude, and inner confrontation are often the classrooms where divine calling becomes clear. It is important to say this without turning pain into identity. You were not meant to suffer endlessly, and you are not a victim of your path, but you were meant to be shaped. The pressure you experienced refined your discernment. The disappointments sharpened your truth. The resets taught you how to begin again without losing yourself. These are not common skills. They are assignment-level skills. If you ever wondered why stability felt temporary or why life refused to let you settle too soon, this is why. Comfort can become a cage when awareness is still forming. A divine assignment requires flexibility, humility, and the courage to release what no longer aligns. Chosen ones are trained to move when others cling, to listen when others distract, to stand when others conform. Circle back now to the beginning of this message and hear it again with new clarity. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the pattern. You were called. There is a real war for awareness happening beneath the surface of everyday life, and chosen ones feel it early. That inner tension you carried, the sense that something mattered deeply even when you couldn't explain what, that was real. And it mattered because your light is necessary. Your life never followed a normal path because you were never meant for a normal role. Normal paths produce predictable outcomes. You were being prepared for impact, not imitation. For truth, not approval. For alignment, not ease. And now, as awareness grows, the confusion begins to soften into meaning. Stand upright in this understanding. Nothing about your path was wasted. Nothing about you is broken. You were being shaped for something that required depth, resilience, and honesty. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you feels steady instead of shaken, comment 111, because you know it now. You were called. The hidden language of your life pattern revelation. Chosen one, there comes a moment in every true spiritual awakening when you realize that God has been speaking to you your entire life, just not in sentences. God's message does not always arrive as clear instructions or loud signs. More often, it arrives as patterns. Quiet, repeating, unmistakable patterns that follow you through different seasons, wearing different faces, but carrying the same lesson. This is the hidden language of your life pattern revelation. Look back carefully, without judgment. You will notice that it was never the same person that kept returning, but the same theme, different relationships, same dynamic, different jobs, same challenge, different environments, same inner tension. This is not coincidence, and it is not bad luck. God does not waste repetition. When something repeats, it is because the lesson is still alive and waiting to be embodied, not merely understood. Most people mistake this for fate. They believe they are doomed to repeat cycles, cursed by circumstance, or trapped by personality. But fate implies powerlessness. Assignment implies intention. A divine assignment repeats itself until the soul integrates what the experience is meant to teach. Once the lesson becomes part of who you are, the pattern dissolves. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you no longer need that classroom. This is where spiritual awakening changes everything. Awakening sharpens awareness. You begin to see beneath the surface of events instead of reacting to them. You stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this shaping in me?" That single shift moves you from victimhood to alignment, from confusion to meaning, from fear to responsibility. God's language is efficient. Instead of explaining, life demonstrates. Instead of lecturing, it repeats. The repetition is not meant to exhaust you, it is meant to awaken you. Each time the pattern returned, you were slightly stronger, slightly more aware, slightly less willing to abandon yourself. Even when you thought you were failing, something inside you was maturing. That is how divine calling and chosen one preparation works. Growth happens quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize you are no longer the same person the pattern first met. Understand this clearly now. Repetition is not punishment. It is precision. God returns the lesson in new forms until the soul responds from truth instead of fear. Until you choose alignment over habit. Until you act from awareness instead of survival. This is why shortcuts never worked for you. This is why avoidance always led you back to the same crossroad. Your life was not circling aimlessly. It was spiraling upward toward embodiment. And embodiment is the key word. Knowing the lesson intellectually is not enough. Feeling it emotionally is not enough. A lesson completes only when it becomes lived wisdom. When your boundaries change. When your choices change. When your self-respect becomes non-negotiable. When you stop betraying yourself to keep peace. That is when the pattern releases you, because it has fulfilled its assignment. Circle back now to the beginning of this message and hear it again with new depth. This is a message from God. You are not imagining these patterns. You were called to notice them. There is a real war for awareness happening in this world, and distraction is its greatest weapon. Most people stay busy enough to never see the pattern. Chosen ones are forced to slow down until they do. Your light is necessary, and light requires clarity. That is why your life demanded reflection instead of distraction, truth instead of comfort, alignment instead of approval. You were trained to read the invisible language of experience so that one day you could walk with intention instead of confusion. This realization is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to empower you. Once you see the pattern, you are no longer inside it unconsciously. Awareness breaks cycles faster than effort ever could. And now that you are seeing, your life will begin to reorganize itself around truth. Stand steady in this knowing. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are awakening to the language that has always been guiding you. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you just clicked into place, comment 111, because you know it now. You were called. Why most people never see their divine assignment. Chosen one, this truth must be spoken gently but clearly. Most people do not fail to fulfill a divine assignment because they are bad, incapable, or unworthy. They fail to see it because awareness never activates. God's message is always present, but it does not shout over noise. It waits for stillness, and stillness has become rare. Most lives are filled with constant movement, constant stimulation, constant distraction. Noise becomes normal. Busyness becomes identity. Validation becomes currency. In that environment, awareness never has room to rise. People learn how to survive, perform, and succeed on the surface, but they never pause long enough to ask why they are here. Without that pause, a divine assignment remains invisible. This is not about intelligence or morality. It is about attention. Awareness requires presence, and presence requires discomfort. Many people sense the inner question early in life, but when it threatens comfort, they silence it. They learn to drown it with achievement, approval, routines, and roles. Over time, the voice grows quieter, not because it leaves, but because it is ignored. Surface success can be especially dangerous to awakening. When life appears to work externally, there is little motivation to look inward. Applause can become anesthesia. Status can replace meaning. A person can have everything they were told to want and still feel empty, but without awareness, that emptiness gets misdiagnosed as boredom or stress rather than a spiritual signal. God's message is subtle. It speaks through unease, not rewards. Ignoring that message has a cost. Not always immediately, but eventually. The cost shows up as restlessness, burnout, quiet dissatisfaction, or a sense of living someone else's life. When alignment is missing, energy leaks, joy becomes conditional, fulfillment becomes temporary. This is not punishment. It is feedback. The soul knows when it is off path, even if the mind explains it away. Chosen ones feel pressure earlier because they are designed to awaken earlier. The tension you felt, the seriousness, the inner weight that seemed disproportionate to your age or situation was not weakness. It was sensitivity to truth. You felt the mismatch between who you were becoming and the life being offered to you. That friction is the signal most people avoid. You could not. This is where the contrast appears, not as superiority, but as responsibility. Chosen ones are not better. They are burdened with awareness sooner. While others were allowed to drift, you were pressed to question. While others could numb themselves comfortably, you felt uneasy doing so. While others could accept surface answers, something inside you refused. That refusal is not arrogance. It is calling. Fear plays a major role in keeping people asleep. Awareness threatens identity. It asks for honesty, change, and courage. For many, it feels safer to stay familiar than to step into the unknown. Comfort becomes protection. External validation becomes direction. Life becomes reactive instead of intentional. Over time, the soul adapts by shrinking its voice to survive. Awareness, once activated, does not shrink back into sleep. It cannot be silenced for long, and it cannot be comfortably ignored. That is why you are here now. That is why distraction never fully worked for you, even when you tried to lose yourself in it. Something inside you always stayed awake, always watching, always sensing that there was more happening beneath the surface of your life. That is also why your path kept being interrupted by unexpected pauses, by moments of loss, by sudden redirections that forced you to stop and feel. Those interruptions were not punishments, they were interventions. God was not pushing you away from life. God was keeping you reachable, keeping a line open to your awareness when everything else tried to drown it out. Return now to the beginning of this message and hear it again, but this time with grounded clarity instead of doubt. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the pressure you felt, the restlessness that wouldn't go away, or the awareness that kept breaking through no matter how busy you became. You were called. What you sensed was real. There is a real war happening in this world, but it is not being fought over land, money, or power. It is being fought over attention and consciousness. Noise is the battlefield. Distraction is the weapon, and awareness is the prize. Most people never realize the battle exists because they are too busy reacting to what is loud. Your light is necessary, not because you are perfect or superior, but because you are willing to see when it would be easier to look away, willing to feel when numbness was offered as relief, willing to respond when silence would have been safer. The world does not change through unconscious repetition or blind momentum. It changes the moment awareness enters a room and refuses to leave, refuses to pretend, refuses to shrink itself for comfort. That is why your awakening mattered early. That is why your life demanded depth instead of ease, truth instead of convenience, and meaning instead of surface success. You were being shaped to carry awareness where it is most needed, and now you are beginning to understand why. Stand in this without ego and without doubt. You were not rushed. You were not broken. You were prepared. Awareness came early because your assignment requires clarity, and if this touched your soul, if something inside you feels firm instead of flattered, comment 111. Because you know it now. You were called. Your resistance was part of the preparation. Chosen one, this is where many people carry unnecessary guilt. They look back at the moments they hesitated, doubted, ran, delayed, or settled, and they believe those moments disqualified them. But hear this clearly now, as God's message, not opinion. Resistance does not disqualify the chosen one. Resistance refines the chosen one. What you thought was failure was actually part of your preparation. Fear was never your enemy. Fear was your teacher. It showed you where the assignment carried real weight. You do not resist what is meaningless. You resist what has the power to change you. That heaviness you felt when you sensed your divine calling was not a sign to turn away. It was a signal of importance. Light responsibilities do not provoke inner conflict, only real ones do. There were seasons when you ran from what you knew. You distracted yourself. You postponed decisions. You tried to live smaller than what your awareness demanded. You may have chosen safety over truth, comfort over alignment, approval over honesty. And yet, even in those moments, something inside you never fully let go. That quiet unrest was not condemnation. It was guidance. Divine calling often feels heavy before it feels clear. At first, it arrives as pressure, not purpose, as tension, not instruction. That is because clarity requires capacity. God does not reveal the full assignment until the vessel is strong enough to carry it without ego or collapse. Resistance slows the process just enough to build humility, discernment, and emotional depth. These are not optional traits. They are required. Inner conflict is not weakness. It is evidence of weight. If your calling were shallow, you would have accepted it easily. If it were about status, applause, or comfort, you would have rushed toward it. But your hesitation came from knowing, even subconsciously, that this path would require honesty, endurance, and surrender. You were not afraid of failure. You were afraid of responsibility. There were times you settled for less than you were capable of, not because you were lazy, but because you were tired. Tired of pressure, tired of feeling different, tired of carrying depth in a shallow world. That tiredness did not erase your calling. It taught you compassion. It taught you patience. It taught you how to recognize others who are silently carrying heavy loads. These lessons cannot be learned from certainty alone. Resistance sharpened your discernment. It taught you the difference between impulse and intuition, between ego desire and soul truth. Each time you hesitated, you learned something about yourself. Each time you questioned, you refined your motives. Each time you delayed, you matured emotionally. What looks like slowness from the outside was actually integration happening on the inside. This is why spiritual awakening is not instant. Awareness arrives first. Embodiment takes time. You were never meant to awaken and immediately perform. You were meant to awaken and then become stable enough to live truth without self-destruction. Resistance slowed you down just enough to prevent arrogance, burnout, or spiritual bypassing. God protects chosen ones even from themselves. Be compassionate with your past self, but do not stay there. Compassion does not mean stagnation. It means understanding the process without excusing avoidance. There comes a point when resistance has taught all it can teach. After that, it becomes fear disguised as caution. Wisdom knows when to rest and when to rise. You are learning that distinction now. Circle back to the beginning of this message and feel the truth settle deeper. This is a message from God. You were not imagining the struggle. You were not broken for hesitating. You were called, and the calling was real enough to challenge you. There is a real war happening beneath the surface, and one of its main strategies is convincing light bearers that their hesitation means disqualification. Your light is necessary, not because you were fearless, but because you were honest. Honest about the weight. Honest about the cost. Honest about your limits. That honesty is what makes your presence trustworthy. The world does not need reckless awakeners. It needs grounded ones. Stand now with firm footing. The resistance has done its work. The refinement has happened. You are not late. You are ready. And if this touched your soul, if you felt relief instead of shame while listening, comment 111, because you know it now. You were called. What your divine assignment actually requires of you, chosen one. Now we move from awareness into responsibility. This is where many people misunderstand a divine assignment, because the mind imagines visibility, applause, or recognition. But God's message has never been about status. A divine assignment is not a reward. It is a responsibility. It is not given to impress others. It is given to stabilize, heal, guide, or illuminate where truth is needed most. If you are listening, understand this clearly. Your calling is about alignment before it is about action. It is about integrity before it is about influence. God does not rush chosen ones into positions they are not prepared to hold inwardly. Talent can attract attention, but only alignment can sustain impact. That is why timing matters more than talent. You may have been capable long before you were released. Capability is common. Readiness is rare. Many chosen ones are placed into quiet roles, not public ones. Roles where they become anchors in families, truth-bearers in systems, stabilizers in chaos, or healers in unseen spaces. Influence does not always look like leadership. Sometimes it looks like presence. Sometimes it looks like restraint. Sometimes it looks like refusing to participate in what everyone else accepts as normal. These roles are heavy because they are subtle, and subtle assignments require discipline. After awakening, discipline becomes essential. Awareness without discipline becomes frustration. Seeing truth without living it creates inner conflict. This is why spiritual awakening is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of responsibility. You are now accountable for what you see, how you speak, how you choose, how you treat others, how you carry your energy. A divine assignment asks you to live consistently, not dramatically. Responsibility always comes before recognition. If recognition comes too early, it distorts the assignment. Applause can corrupt intention. Validation can weaken integrity. That is why many chosen ones are trained in obscurity, not to punish them, but to purify them. When you learn to act from alignment instead of approval, you become trustworthy with influence. Living as a vessel means allowing something greater than ego to move through you. A vessel does not perform, it transmits. It does not seek attention, it seeks clarity. It does not rush to be seen, it remains available. This is a difficult shift for the mind, because the mind wants proof and reward, but the soul understands service. The soul understands that real impact often happens quietly, consistently, and without witnesses. Endurance is part of the requirement. A divine assignment is not a moment. It is a way of living. It will ask you to choose truth when it costs you comfort, integrity when it costs you popularity, patience when it costs you speed. These choices shape your character, and character is what holds assignment steady over time. Without endurance, awakening collapses under pressure. You may notice that your life keeps placing you in situations where others lean on you, where clarity is expected from you, where your presence calms, grounds, or exposes truth. This is not accidental. You are being positioned as a stabilizing force, not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to be honest, willing to listen, willing to stand when it would be easier to blend in. Circle back now to the beginning of this message and feel the continuity. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the seriousness of what you feel. You were called, and the calling is real enough to demand discipline. There is a war beneath the surface of this world, and it is not fought with noise. It is fought with integrity, awareness, and presence. Light does not need to shout. It needs to endure. Your light is necessary, not because it dazzles, but because it steadies, because it clarifies, because it holds when others collapse. This is not a glamorous path, but it is a meaningful one, and meaning sustains longer than excitement ever could. Stand in this responsibility without fear. You are not being asked to perform. You are being asked to align, to live honestly, to remain available, to carry what you have been given with humility and strength. That is what your divine assignment requires. And if this touched your soul, if something inside you feels grounded instead of inflated, comment 111, because you know it now. You were called. How to walk forward once you see the pattern. Chosen one, once the pattern is seen, life does not ask you to rush. It asks you to listen. Awareness changes behavior naturally, without force, because truth rearranges priorities on its own. You do not need a long list of instructions now. you need stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. It is presence. It is the state where alignment becomes louder than impulse and clarity rises without effort. This is still God's message, and it is important you understand this part deeply. When life pattern revelation occurs, unconscious living becomes impossible. You cannot unsee what you now recognize. You cannot return to distraction without feeling the cost. This is not a punishment. It is protection. Awareness is the safeguard that keeps you from abandoning yourself again. Walking forward does not mean pushing forward. Force belongs to fear. Alignment belongs to trust. When you stop forcing outcomes, life begins to reorganize itself around truth. Doors that required strain quietly close. Paths that once felt blocked soften, conversations change. Priorities shift. This is not magic. This is coherence. When your inner state aligns, your external world responds. Patience becomes essential here, not as waiting, but as listening. Urgency clouds discernment. Alignment clarifies it. Many chosen ones make the mistake of trying to act immediately after awakening, believing movement proves readiness. But God's timing is precise. Timing matters more than speed. What is aligned arrives without resistance. What is rushed demands sacrifice of integrity. Inner honesty is your compass now. Not what looks good, not what sounds impressive, not what earns approval, but what feels clean inside. Truth does not always feel exciting, but it feels steady. When a choice drains you, it is misaligned. When a choice steadies you, even if it scares you, it is usually true. Learn to trust that signal. It will guide you more accurately than external advice ever could. Letting life reorganize itself requires courage, because it means releasing control. You may notice things falling away without dramatic endings. Interests fading, relationships shifting, old ambitions losing their grip. Do not panic. This is not loss. This is refinement. Life is adjusting to who you are becoming, not who you were trained to be. Stillness over force does not mean passivity. It means conscious action. When you move from awareness, your steps are fewer but stronger. You say less, but with more truth. You commit more slowly, but more fully. This is how endurance is built. This is how integrity is protected. Trusting the unfolding does not mean blind faith. It means informed trust. You have evidence now. Your life has shown you that patterns exist, that guidance arrives, that resistance refines, that alignment opens what force never could. Trust is not naive. It is earned through recognition. Circle back now to the beginning of this message and feel how everything connects. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the clarity growing inside you. You are called, and calling brings responsibility, not chaos. There is a real war for awareness happening, and unconsciousness is its greatest ally. But you are no longer unconscious. Your light is necessary, not because you rush ahead, but because you remain present. Because you choose alignment when urgency tempts you. Because you allow truth to guide timing. This is how change actually happens. Quietly, consistently, from the inside out. Walk forward gently but firmly. You do not need to announce your awakening. You need to live it. Life will respond. It always does when awareness leads. And if this touched your soul, if you feel calm instead of confused, comment 111. Because you know it now. You were called. Confirmation for the chosen one who stayed until the end. Chosen one, if you are still here, let this land gently and clearly. Staying was not accidental. You were not carried here by curiosity or habit. You stayed because something in you recognized truth and chose to remain present with it. That choice itself is confirmation. God's message does not hold everyone to the end. It reaches only those prepared to receive it. This is not about endurance or attention span. It is about readiness. When the soul is ready, it does not rush away from clarity. It leans in. The calm you may feel now is not emptiness. It is alignment settling into place. No hype, no fear. Just a quiet, knowing that something important has been acknowledged. Circle back to the beginning and hear it one final time with full awareness. This is a message from God. You were not imagining the pull that brought you here. You were called. The recognition you felt at the start was real, and the steadiness you feel now is proof of integration. Awareness has moved from activation into grounding. Divine timing is precise. Not early, not late. Exact. You did not miss your moment. You arrived when you could finally receive without distortion. That is why this message feels firm instead of overwhelming. Heavy truths overwhelm the unready. They steady the prepared, and you were prepared. There is a real war happening beneath the surface of everyday life. Not a war of violence, but a war for attention, truth, and consciousness. Distraction is loud. Truth is quiet. Most never hear it because they never slow down long enough to listen. You did, and that matters. Your light is necessary not because it flashes, but because it holds steady in a world that keeps shaking. You do not need to prove anything now. You do not need to rush into action or announce your awakening. Confirmation does not require performance. It requires alignment. What you have received will shape how you move, speak, choose, and remain. That is enough. That is how real change happens. Let reassurance settle into your body. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not alone. The clarity you carry now will guide your steps more accurately than urgency ever could. Trust the unfolding. Trust the quiet adjustments already happening. Trust that what is meant to align will do so without force. If you feel aligned with this message, if something inside you feels recognized rather than excited, comment 777. Not as a ritual, but as a confirmation to yourself that you received what was meant for you. This is alignment, acknowledging alignment. And before you go, let this final truth anchor you. This was not random. This was not imagination. You were called. Your light is necessary. The world needs grounded truth, steady presence, and awake hearts more than ever. You are part of that answer, simply by being willing to see and remain. If this touched your soul, if you feel calm instead of confused, comment 111, because you know it now. You were called.